The gravel crunched under the tires as I pulled up the long, winding path that led to the farmhouse. My farmhouse now. The morning sun stretched across the open fields, throwing warm gold over the tall grass that danced in the breeze. It felt unreal, like stepping into a life I had only imagined on stressed-out evenings staring at HOA notices taped to my front door. Here, there were no rules about paint shades, mailbox shapes, or lawn height. No committees spying from behind blinds. It was just land, open and honest, and it belonged to me. I stepped out of the truck and let the quiet settle. The kind of quiet that wasn't empty, more like the land was breathing calmly, waiting to be lived on again. I had barely taken 10 steps toward the porch before the peace broke like a gunshot. A tiny electric whir in the distance grew louder, faster, almost panicked. I turned just in time to see an HOA golf cart barreling down the road like it was chasing a fugitive. Dust puffed behind it in a frantic trail. Even before it screeched to a stop, I knew exactly who it was. Karen! She hopped off the cart as if she expected the earth itself to bow. Sunglasses oversized, lips pursed hard enough to crack granite, and, of course, her clipboard tucked under her arm like it was a badge issued by the Supreme Court. She strode toward me with the energy of a woman who had spent years mastering the art of confrontation. "Excuse me," she called out, voice sharp enough to slice through the quiet morning air. I blinked slowly, already bracing myself. "Morning, Karen." Her chin lifted. "You cannot be here." I almost laughed, not out of disrespect, but because it was so predictable. "Karen, I literally own this property now, closed on it yesterday." She stared at me like I had said I owned the moon. No, that's not possible. This land has always been associated with our HOA. You cannot just decide to—" She waved her hand in a dramatic arc. "Take over land that affects our community." I spread my arms, gesturing to the open acres behind me. "It's not associated with anything. It's a separate parcel. Public record. You can check." She tilted her head, offended by the implication that she hadn't already checked. "I know what the records say, but you should also know that community guidelines extend to adjacent properties." "That's not real," I replied. "You can't enforce HOA rules on land outside your boundary." Her nostrils flared. She pulled her clipboard closer and flipped through papers with the intensity of someone trying to summon legal power out of thin air. "Page 47, she said, stabbing her finger dramatically onto a page, "clearly states that all adjacent land must comply with HOA standards to preserve community value." "Karen," I said gently, "that's a piece of paper your board wrote. It's not the law." Her eyes snapped up and something dangerous flickered in them. "You think you can just show up here and do whatever you want?" "Yes," I said honestly. "That's the beauty of owning your own land." She let out a scoff that sounded like it came from somewhere deep in her soul. "This is highly inappropriate. You didn't even consult the HOA before making this purchase." "I didn't need to," I reminded her. She clutched her clipboard tighter. "You can't build structures without approval. You can't alter the landscape. You can't bring in livestock or machinery without submitting the proper forms." I raised an eyebrow. "Karen, do you honestly believe I need your approval to plant tomatoes on my own property?" Her jaw clenched so hard I thought I heard a crack. She took a step closer, lowering her voice as if she were trying to scare me into compliance. "We will be filing violations, multiple violations, and don't think for a second we won't escalate this if necessary." "Violations," I repeated. "For what? Breathing air outside your HOA? That tone is unnecessary," she snapped. "The HOA has authority." "Not here," I cut in, pointing at the ground. "This is county land, not HOA territory. Your authority ends over there." I pointed toward the neat row of cookie-cutter houses half a mile away, snug behind their gates like obedient children. Karen followed my finger, stared at her own neighborhood, and then whipped back around as if refusing to acknowledge the boundary. "Lines on maps don't change community standards." "They literally do," I told her. There was a long moment where she didn't speak at all. She just breathed hard, like she was mentally rewinding her life choices and trying to rewrite the universe so it fit her rules again. Then she shoved a stack of papers toward me so quickly I almost dropped them. "These are the guidelines. The board expects adherence." "I'm not part of your HOA," I reminded her, gently pushing the papers back. She yanked them away, insulted. "That's what you think," she muttered, scribbling something angrily on her clipboard. "We will review this situation and provide you formal notice within 72 hours. "Notice of what?" She stepped back, lifting her chin again, regaining her self-appointed authority. "Trespassing," she said confidently. I stared at her. "On my own farm?" She hesitated. A tiny flicker of uncertainty crossed her face, but she buried it quickly under more indignation. "We have rules for a reason. You cannot simply disrupt the harmony of our community." "Harmony?" I echoed. "Karen, I'm the one who bought land to escape your rules." Her cheeks flushed red like a malfunctioning traffic light. She jabbed the air with her pen, pointing nowhere and everywhere at once. "You've been warned." With that dramatic declaration, she spun around, marched to her golf cart, and climbed in with the posture of a general entering battle. The tires screeched as she sped away, showering the road with dust and frustration. She drove straight past the HOA boundary sign as if pretending it didn't exist. Like if she didn't see it, the border couldn't stop her authority from spreading. I watched her disappear down the road, the quiet slowly returning as the hum of her cart faded. Then I took a deep breath of my new life. A life not governed by committees, clipboards, or color-coded violation notices. But even as the peaceful wind brushed past me again, I couldn't shake the strange feeling settling in my chest. Karen wasn't done, not by a long shot. The sun had barely risen when I stepped outside the farmhouse the next morning, stretching my arms and taking in the cool air. Birds were chirping over the fields, the world felt wide and peaceful, and for the first time in a long time it felt like I wasn't living in someone else's crosshairs. But that feeling lasted only about 5 seconds, because standing at the gate, my gate, was Karen. Not just Karen, she had backup. 2 HOA board members flanked her like bodyguards, though they looked more nervous than authoritative. And right in the middle of my driveway, as if marking some kind of sacred territory, sat a single bright orange traffic cone. A traffic cone. On dirt. Karen stood there with her arms crossed tight, chin up, clipboard pressed against her chest like a shield. The moment she saw me, her expression sharpened into satisfaction, like she'd been rehearsing whatever she was about to unleash. "Well," she said as I approached, "it's about time." I stared at the cone first. "Karen, why is there a traffic cone in my driveway?" She scoffed. "It's a boundary marker, a temporary warning until the board finalizes the citation." "A citation," I repeated slowly. "For what?" "For violating the community's operating hours," she said confidently, as if she were reading from scripture. "We have rules about noise, machinery, and morning disruptions." One of the board members beside her cleared his throat with a small cough that sounded like regret. "We, have guidelines," he added quietly, like he didn't fully believe in what they were doing. I rubbed my forehead. "Karen, I wasn't even using machinery this morning. I was drinking coffee." "That's not the point," she snapped. "You were preparing to use machinery before 10 a.m., eh?" "Preparing?" I raised a brow. "You can see the future now?" She ignored the sarcasm. "You cannot simply operate a tractor whenever you feel like it. There are procedures." I pointed behind me. "It's a tractor on a farm. That's literally what it's for." Karen stepped forward as if closing the distance would give her more power. "Your activities are affecting our residents. The noise, the dust, the unpleasant farm smell." "Farm smell," I said flatly. "Karen, this is a farm." The second board member gave me a small, sympathetic look, but he didn't dare speak. Karen pushed her sunglasses up her nose with a dramatic shove. "We had a board meeting last night. Emergency session. Unanimous vote. You are to cease all construction, all machinery, and all land modification until you submit an architectural review request." I blinked. Architectural review for what? Cutting grass? Fixing a fence? For any alterations that affect the community's sightlines, she said proudly. "Sightlines," I muttered. "You mean the trees block your view of my field?" "One of our residents complained that the dirt mound near the barn is unsightly," she said. "It's a compost pile," I explained. "It's supposed to look like that." Karen waved her clipboard in a circle. "Well, you should have submitted a proposal." A laugh, an exhausted, disbelieving laugh slipped out of me. "Karen, I don't need to submit proposals to you. This isn't HOA land." She stiffened, her face hardening. "We've gone over this. Adjacent properties impact community value. The board will not tolerate unregulated activity next to our neighborhood." Then she stepped closer, lowering her voice like she was about to deliver a final blow. If you refuse compliance, we will take legal action. I opened my mouth to respond, but a distant engine rumbled down the road, drawing all heads toward it. A county sheriff's cruiser rolled to a stop beside us, kicking dust into the air. For a moment, Karen's chest puffed with triumph, as though she had summoned reinforcements. She practically sprinted to the patrol car as the sheriff stepped out. "Officer, thank goodness you're here!" She pointed at me like I was an armed threat. "Arrest him, immediately." The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "Trespassing," she barked. "And for ignoring multiple HOA violations." The sheriff looked at me, then at the farm, then back at her. Slowly, he tipped his hat in greeting. "Morning. You the new owner?" "Yes, sir," I said. He nodded. "Congratulations. Lot of folks are happy to see someone taking care of this place again." Karen made a choking sound as if the sheriff had betrayed her. "Officer, I don't think you understand. He is breaking numerous community regulations." The sheriff rested his hands casually on his belt. "Ma'am, this property isn't part of your HOA." She blinked. Once, twice. Her entire body seemed to freeze. But it affects us. We voted." "Doesn't matter," the sheriff said calmly. "The HOA doesn't have jurisdiction out here. This is county land. He's well within his rights." Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again, but no sound came out. The sheriff continued, "Unless you have evidence he's breaking a county law, there's no issue here." Karen's face twisted into a mix of outrage and disbelief. "He is refusing to comply with our standards." The sheriff cracked, a small grin. "Ma'am, your standards stop at your border." Her head whipped toward the two board members as if begging them to back her up, but they suddenly found the ground very interesting. You can't be serious," she whispered to the sheriff. "We're the homeowners association." "And this is a home on land you don't own," he replied simply. For the first time since I'd known her, Karen didn't have a comeback. Her confidence, that unwavering sense of superiority, flickered like a candle in the wind. Eventually she straightened her shoulders, clinging to the last thread of authority she could muster. "We will be escalating this to the regional office," she declared, "even though no such thing existed. Come, gentlemen." She snatched up the traffic cone, nearly tipping it over in her haste. The board members shuffled after her, trying not to make eye contact. They climbed back into the golf cart, which sputtered under the weight of disappointment, and Karen pointed dramatically toward the road. "Let's go," she commanded. The cart lurched forward, wobbling away with uneven confidence. She didn't look back, but I could practically feel the frustration radiating off her like heat. The sheriff watched them go, then turned to me. "You're gonna have fun with that one." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "You have no idea," he chuckled. "Well, if she calls again, we'll handle it. But you're fine. Welcome to rural life." He gave me one more nod, climbed back into his cruiser, and drove off, leaving behind a settling cloud of dust and a quiet that felt earned. I leaned against the fence, watching the fields shift under the breeze. For the first time since moving in, I felt a little more grounded, more certain. Karen had tried to bring the HOA to my doorstep, but the sheriff's words echoed in my head. "Your standards stop at your border." Yet even as peace rolled over the land again, I knew one thing for sure: Karen wasn't done, not even close.